Let's give it a go. We're going to create a test user, just so only you who has access to the AWS account. You can create a user. We'll call it test user. Okay? We want them to have access to the AWS management console, of course. So we would say yes, they can have access. Let's see. Okay, we recommend that you can select the IAM user because we want them to, be able to sign in as well and have access keys and all of that. So once we do this, you can create a custom password or you can give them an auto-generated password. We can leave it as auto-generated is fine, and just click next. Okay, let's use something more fine. Okay, there we go. So because we don't have we can certainly assign some policy now to the user. We don't have a user group, so that's fine. Um, when I was mentioning roles and policies, so policies allow you to, attach different services, access to services to that user. So we created a user. We want them to have certain accesses to certain services, right? One of the things you see here is the administrator access. This is the access that allows a user account to have global administrative privileges to the account, which means they can do anything on the AWS account, which is not the best way to go if you're creating new users. Okay, you need to limit their accesses to what they actually need to work with. All right. So for this instance, you can simply give them. If we say we want them to only have access to the VMs, which is the EC2, we can give them access to only the EC2s. You would see Amazon EC2 full access. We can just give them that, and yeah. Once we do that, we'd say next. That's fine. Only EC2s. Good. And we'll create a user. Okay, so this is very easy. So we've created a new user. If it's a new user in your organization, you can simply send them the link to the console here, send them the username, send them the password. They would sign in. And once they sign in, they would only have access to the EC2s. They won't be able to make changes to, EC2s. All right. So that's basically how to create a new user, assign roles. You can create different type of roles, depending, it's custom, depending on what you hired somebody for or what the user needs. You can create different roles, add different policies to it. You can also customize the policies using YAML, but those are for more advanced usage. As you go along and you learn, on the platform, you would get more um, conversant with the platform on how to actually do things. Okay, so yeah, and you can also check, in terms of reports. You can access a lot of each user accounts and see what's actually going on your account. Okay, so that's pretty much identity and access, which is just a way to create new users, limit their roles, limit their policies and their accesses on your account. All right, that's the first thing to know as a cloud administrator, because that's one of the things that you would be doing on a day-to-day. All right. Now, the next thing I would like to show us is the EC2s. When we were talking about Azure in the last training, one of the tests that we did, which was hands-on, was to create a virtual machine on the cloud and also access it and make sure it works. Okay. So in this case, this is Amazon Web Service. We're going to create an EC2 instance, which is also a virtual machine, and I'm going to show you how we can access it. Okay. That's one of the services that we will utilize today. And we can simply search for EC2 or go back to the services. So we'll search for EC2. You see EC2 here. We'll click on EC2 and it will take us to the service page. All right. Now on the service page, you would see a lot of things. Okay. The virtual machines are mainly called EC2 instances. on AWS. That's one of the terminologies that you need to be familiar with. And you would see instances on the left here. You'd see a lot of details about setting up EC2s and setting up networking of your virtual machine, which is similar to Azure as well. Because when you set up a virtual machine, they need to have access, and you need to set up a networking for it to be able to access it, and for it to be able to access the internet or with a public IP and all of that, which is automatic sometimes. But if you already have a networking setup for your organization, you will need to specify some of the network connections, or if it's a private network, you need to specify that as well. But not to go too far, we're just going to launch one instance and then see how it actually works. Okay, so you can see here, launch an instance, which is the same thing as saying create an instance or create a virtual server, right? You'd see underneath here, it's pretty detailed. To get started, launch an Amazon EC2 instance, which is a virtual server in the cloud. Okay, so we're going to click launch instance, and it'll bring us to the setup page where we just enter the details that we want. So for this server, I want to create a Windows server. So for this server, I'm going to call it um, training server 2. Okay, I'm going to call it training server 2. If you scroll down, you see application and OS images. Like I said, I want to create a Windows server. In this case, you would see that there are a lot of OSs that you can use. There's the Linux OS, powered by Amazon. You got the Mac if you want to create a Mac server. Ubuntu is there, Red Hat, SUSE, Linux. Debian is also there. But in this case, we want to go Windows. All right, depending on what you require or what you want to do, you can select any of it. Okay, but this is Windows. We just want to show you as a test how it works. So we'll click on Windows. Okay, because we're using a free tier subscription, we're going to leave it at the default. Okay, but for an account where it's paid, you can select different sizes that you require. Okay, we're going with the Windows Server 2022. That's the highest. We can also choose any of the servers here. As long as there's a free tier on it, then you can create them. Okay, the ones that do not have free tier, they're paid for, and you would be charged. So please do not select that for training. Okay, you can only use those in the field, or if you're working, which the company will pay for. Okay, but we're working with the free tier subscription, so let's stick to that. Okay, we can we can leave it at 2022. I haven't actually worked with the server 2022, so let's just create 2019 instead. That's fine. You can select any of it. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we'll click that one. For instance type as well, this is where um, you select for Azure. When we were looking at sizes, I showed you some size of compute resources, B2MS, B4MS, which are the sizes of the VMs, which contains the RAM, the ROM, and the processing power. It's similar here. They use a different size system. We have the T2 Nano, which includes one CPU, 0.5 gig of memory, and all of that. You can see the pricing. But as usual, we're going to go with the free tier, which is the one that comes with the free subscription that we are using right now for training. So we'll select that. However, depending on what you want to create, if you need a server with a lot of memory, if you want to create something, or the service is going to be powerful, you can you can select any of the larger computing size here. You can see this is a compute resource for 32 CPU, 64 gig memory. That's that's going to be very powerful. So depending on what you require, you can select any of them. But for this case, we're going to select the free tier because that's what we have the subscription for. And this is just for testing purposes anyway. So we'll leave it at that. And then down here, which is very important, in AWS, not quite, it's quite different from Azure, where you can create your password while you're setting up the virtual machine. In this case, you can't. In this case, you would have to instead create a key pair, which, a key pair allows you to securely connect to your instance. It's just a way to secure your connections to your servers. Okay, and then ensure that you have access to the key pair before you launch the instance. So how do we do that? I already have a key pair, but we're going to create one nonetheless. So you would click on create new pair, and we're going to call this training key 2. Okay, this is the RSA encrypted private and public key pair. That's what we want. We're going to keep it at the .pem, which we can use with OpenSSH. Just select that, and we'll click create key pair. So this will automatically download a key pair for us, okay, which you need to safely store and secure, because you would need it when you're trying to get the password or decrypt the password to the server. Okay, so let's leave that. That is already downloaded and stored in my uh, downloads folder. Okay, then we'll scroll down to the network settings. As I mentioned earlier in the PowerPoint, the networking of AWS is all controlled by the virtual private cloud, which is called VPC, okay, which automatically, as you can see here, is what controls the networking side of things. And since we're creating a VM or a virtual machine, you need a network setup. Okay, so it would automatically create, I'm just going to click on information here. It will automatically create, attach a VPC to your virtual. If you want to know more about, you can simply click on info, and it will take you to, the pages where you can get more information on that. Okay. All right. So, yeah, and on the firewall security groups, because we are working with a Windows computer, we want to connect to our machine after it has been created or after it has been set up using the RDP, similar to what we did on the Azure platform. So we're going to keep it at RDP. If you have, for some reason, you want to access your server via HTTPS, you can always do that as well. If you want to limit your access to your VM using a security group, you can always do that. We don't have one yet because this is a brand new AWS account, so we will allow it to create its own security group. If you want to also limit the people who can access the server using RDP, which is the remote desktop connection, you can click on the IP address here and specify the IP address. So if you only want people at the office at a specific place to access, you can just customize the IP of that, organization and put it there. Also, if you have specific engineers working in different locations and you want to limit the access, you can always add their IPs to it as well. But in this case, we're just going to leave it at anywhere so anyone can connect to it if they have the details in the server, which is difficult to get, by the way. But anyway, we'll leave it as it is. Allow RDP traffic. Here, we're not going to change anything because we're using a free tier, so let's leave it as that. And then we can do launch instance on the right here. Okay, so we'll do launch instance. And it's fairly quick if you're launching an instance on AWS, although it takes some time to um, fully provision. Okay, so currently it's still provisioning in the background, but you can try to connect or do some other settings on it. Okay, I'm just going to go back to instances so we can see. I already have an instance created earlier, which was stopped. So I'm just going to start it while this is initiating. As you can see, it's independent, so it's still creating. So I'm going to just start up the one that I created earlier. Okay, so whichever one comes up first, we can always connect to it. All right, so we're just going to wait until they're up and running, then we can connect to either of them. And I'll show you how to connect to the instance that we just created or the virtual machine that we just created. But I'm going to just scroll down so we can see some of the information that is down here of our server. This is our server, so I'm just going to click this. Okay, so you can see more details of your server once it's created. You have the instance ID, which is the ID, specific ID that's given to the server that we just created. You can see the IP address, the public IP. You can see the IPv4 as well. If both is useful. This is a private IP. This is a public IP. The DNS name is there. Every information that you require, you can get it from here. Similarly to Azure as well, the compute resource power, everything is there. If you want to see more about the security of things or set up some things, you can see it here. Um, the network inside, storage, everything. So it's very detailed. You have total control of whatever server that you create on the cloud, especially if you're creating it on Azure or AWS. As you can see, our services are already running. As you can see, the servers are in running state. So we're going to try to connect to training server 2, which we just created. Okay, so we're going to click on connect here. All right, since we only allowed the RDP to connect to a server, we're just going to click on RDP here, and it'll bring us to this point. Now, the first thing we need to do is download the RDP file, which is what we'll use to connect to a server. Okay, so I'm going to download that, say keep, and I'm just going to open the file and show you what it brings up. Okay, click connect, and it will show us this. All right. Yeah. Okay, which is what we're going to use to access the password if we want to sign in. Okay, so I'm just going to show us how to get the password. All right, so the username is automatically so that we can actually see how to do it. Okay, so we'll click. All right, so our instance is still provisioning, so we'll just give it some minutes there. I'm going to use the one that I created earlier, okay, because that one is ready to go. Should be able to create that as well. So let's use this one. We do get password. There we go. All right. So it's very similar. If you remember, we downloaded a private key earlier. Okay. It's similar. This is a different server, but it's very similar. I already created a train key earlier. So I'm just going to do upload key file, and it will take me to my download folder, which is where I have the .pem key file that I downloaded earlier. So I'm going to click on that one, which is for this server, and I'll do decrypt password. Okay, so it's going to decrypt the password for me, and I would be able to copy it and then sign into my server. All right, I'm going to download the remote file again so I can access the server. Here we go, connect. It's going to bring up a page like this for me to enter my password. As you know, I already copied the password, so I'm just going to paste it in here. I say OK. Here we go. Let's select yes. And it would open up the server for us, which is very similar and very, it's almost the same as, creating a virtual machine on Azure. Okay. It would open up our virtual machine for us. This is our server that we just created. As you can see, it's has all the attributes of a complete Windows server. All right, and you can simply work on it. It's connected to the internet. You can create your You can install your applications on it. If use it as a as a server, you can use this as your web application server or whatever needs that you required it for. All right, you can see some of the details here about the instance. This is it's a signature of AWS where you see the details right here at the top, so you know what you're working with. All right, so we've been able to successfully create a virtual machine on AWS. It's very straightforward. Once the other one is also ready, we can also connect to that one. I'm gonna try to connect to that one as well. Should be ready to go now. One moment. Oh yeah, it's ready to go. So I'm just gonna uh, connect to that one as well. This is the training key for the key pair for the second server. So I'm just gonna click on that one, and we'll decrypt our password. Here we go. Download the IDP file. I'm gonna say open. Click on connect. And copy our password here. Paste and connect. Okay, here we go. And that's it. We've been able to successfully log into the server that we just created. So it's as easy as that. Once it's set up, it's fast, it's efficient. You'll be able to sign into uh, the server. It's just loading up. Let's give it some time. There we go. All right. And we've successfully signed into the second server as well. So it's as easy as that. It's very fast. You can say yes to this. It's very fast, very efficient, and you can go ahead to set up, install whatever applications you want on the server. If it's dedicated for something, you can go ahead. So it's the same way you would create a Linux server or a Ubuntu or Red Hat server, depending on what the use case is. Okay.